It wasn't the pain that broke her. Adrian Kowalski had been through pain before. 3 rounds of IVF, 2 miscarriages, and more nights crying alone in the bathroom than she could count. Pain was something she knew how to carry quietly, the way you carry a stone in your chest and just learn to breathe around it. What broke her was the silence on the other end of the phone. She had been in the emergency room for 40 minutes when she finally got through to her husband. 40 minutes of a nurse pressing on her abdomen while the ultrasound tech kept asking her to stay still. 40 minutes of being told that the baby, the one they had fought so hard for, the one that had survived to 14 weeks when the others hadn't, was showing signs of distress. 40 minutes before she thought to call Kieran. He answered on the second ring. She heard music in the background. Not something soft. Something loud and easy and unbothered. "Hey," he said. "I'm in the hospital," she told him. "Something's wrong with the baby. They're saying I need to stay overnight. Kieran, I need you here." There was a pause. Just long enough for her to notice it. "Okay," he said. I'll head over soon." He didn't come that night. He texted at 11:17 to say he'd gotten held up. He texted again at 1 in the morning to say he'd check on her in the morning. Adrian lay in the hospital bed with monitors strapped to her belly and her phone face down on the mattress, and she told herself it was fine. He'd been under so much pressure at work. The merger had him stretched thin, she understood. But somewhere underneath all the understanding she'd spent 7 years practicing, something shifted. The baby held on. The doctors gave her something to stabilize the contractions, and sent her home 2 days later with a list of restrictions and a follow-up appointment for the following week. Kieran picked her up from the hospital. He brought coffee, her favorite, from the place on Harvard Street, and he held her hand in the car, and she almost talked herself back into believing things were fine. Almost. It was her colleague Bea who told her first, Beatrice Okafor, who sat 3 desks away at the urban planning office downtown, and who had the particular misfortune of having a cousin who worked at the same tech company as Kieran. Bea came to her apartment one Wednesday evening in late October with a bottle of sparkling water, because Adrian couldn't have wine and a look on her face like she was walking into something she didn't want to walk into. "I need to tell you something," Bea said, "and I need you to know I have been arguing with myself about this for 3 weeks. Her name was Simone Varga. She worked in the business development team 1 floor below Kieran's office. The cousin had seen them at a restaurant on College Street, not together exactly, but together in the way that 2 people are together when they think no one is watching. Close across the table, her hand briefly on his, laughing at something low and private. Adrian listened to all of it. She asked 2 questions. Then she thanked Bea and walked her to the door and sat down on the kitchen floor, because her legs stopped working right. She did not call Kieran. She made herself a cup of tea. She sat with the information for 3 days, turning it over the way you turn over something sharp, checking the edges. On the 4th day, she went through his laptop. It took her 11 minutes to find everything she needed. The messages started in July. 2 months after her second miscarriage. She found the restaurant receipts saved in a folder he'd labeled miscellaneous expenses. She found a hotel booking in Niagara-on-the-Lake for a weekend in August when he had told her he was at a conference. She found a photograph saved in a buried album. Simone Varga at a candlelit table, smiling at the camera the way women smile when they are happy and safe. Adrian had been 5 weeks pregnant the weekend of that hotel booking. She had spent it at her mother's house in Oakville, too nauseated to drive, eating crackers and praying this one would be different. She closed the laptop. She went to her prenatal appointment the next morning. She did not say anything to Kieran. She waited. It was December when she went into early labor. 31 weeks. She felt the first contraction at 7 in the evening while she was doing dishes. By 8:30 she was back in the emergency room, and this time there was no calm. There was movement and urgency, and a nurse saying, "We need to move her now." And Adrian lying on a stretcher, watching fluorescent lights pass overhead and thinking, with perfect clarity, "He is not going to come." She was right. Kieran arrived at the hospital at midnight. She had been in the NICU for 2 hours by then, recovering from an emergency delivery, and their daughter, born 8 weeks early and impossibly small, was in an incubator 12 feet away. He walked in with his coat still on and his hair still perfect, and something about that made her stomach drop. "I got here as fast as I could," he said. She looked at him and didn't say anything. He stayed for an hour. He held her hand for part of it. He looked at the baby through the glass but didn't ask to go in. He said he needed to get some sleep because he had an early call in the morning, and he kissed her forehead and he left. The nurse who came in to check on her afterward. An older woman named Denise with a quiet manner, and 26 years on that floor, sat with Adrian for a few minutes without being asked. She didn't say anything about Kieran leaving, she just stayed. "What's her name?" Denise asked, looking toward the incubator. Adrian hadn't let herself pick a name. She had been too afraid to pick a name. "Ren," she said. It came out before she'd consciously decided on it. Denise smiled. "That's lovely. Ren Kowalski Marsh." She weighed 2 pounds and 14 ounces. She had Adrian's nose and Kieran's ears and absolutely no patience for any of it, which the NICU nurses said was a very good sign. Adrian's mother, Helen, arrived the following morning. She drove up from Oakville in the dark and walked into that hospital room and held her daughter's face in both hands and said, "You did this, look what you did." And Adrian held herself together until her mother said that, and then she couldn't anymore. Her best friend since university, Mara, came that afternoon. Mara sat in the plastic chair and said nothing for a while and then said, "Is he here?" "He had work," Adrian said. Mara looked at her. "I know," Adrian said, I know." She told them both about Simone Varga that evening. She had been keeping it in like something behind a door and she finally let the door open. She walked them through the laptop, the hotel, the restaurant on College Street, the conference weekend in August. She watched her mother's face go through several things at once. She watched Mara's go very still. "How long have you known?" her mother asked. 2 months, and you haven't. I needed to wait until I had leverage. Adrian looked at her hands. I needed to wait until after she was born. Ren came home 7 weeks later, small and fierce and wired to monitors that beeped every time Adrian's heart stopped. She had a bassinet in the bedroom and a swing in the living room, and a mother who hadn't slept more than 3 hours consecutively since December. Kieran had moved back into the house when she came home from the hospital. He set up a cot in the spare room and said he wanted to help, and for 2 weeks he did help. In the ways that were visible and manageable, the ways that didn't require him to be fully present. He could do a bottle feed if she set everything up first. He could sit with Ren for an hour in the afternoon if Adrian was specific about what that meant. But at 3 in the morning when Ren's oxygen monitor alarmed, it was Adrian who was already standing before she was awake. It was Adrian who knew what each alarm tone meant. It was Adrian who kept a notebook of feeding times and weight checks and the small daily victories that the NICU nurses had told her to celebrate. One Saturday in February, she came downstairs at noon and found Kieran on the couch with his phone, and Ren asleep in the swing 3 feet away. He had not checked the monitor log. He did not know she had slept for 2 hours straight, which was new, been home for 5 hours and had not thought to write any of it down. He looked up when Adrian walked in. "She's been fine," he said. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked up Ren, very carefully, and walked upstairs. She called a lawyer the following week. Patricia Brennan ran a family law practice on Bay Street. She had been recommended by Mara, who had described her as someone who did not lose. Adrian walked into that office with a folder containing 2 months of documentation. The laptop screenshots, the hotel receipt, the restaurant, the hospital logs showing Kieran's arrival times on both nights she had been admitted. Patricia reviewed everything without any visible reaction. Then she looked up. "He came at midnight the night your daughter was born," she said. "Yes. And he left after an hour." "Yes. And he has not kept any records of her care since she came home." "No." Patricia set the folder down. "He's going to want shared custody." "I know. We are going to make that very difficult for him." Adrian exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. The divorce papers were filed in March. Kieran called her the same evening, his voice cycling through shock and then injury and then something that wanted to be anger but wasn't quite brave enough to get there. "I thought we were working through this," he said. "We weren't," Adrian said. "You were. I was gathering documentation." Silence. "I know about Simone, Kieran. I've known since October." More silence. Then, "Adrian, I need you to understand something," she said. Her voice was steady in a way that surprised her. "You left me in that hospital twice. Ren was born at 2300 hours and you walked in at midnight and left before 2 in the morning. I have the NICU visitor logs. I have them from both admissions. Every night I was in that hospital, I have the logs. I'm not asking you to explain, I'm telling you so you understand what happens next." She hung up. Mara showed up that night with food from the Thai place on Queen Street, and sat on the kitchen floor with Adrian, while Ren slept in her arms and said, "How do you feel?" "Scared," Adrian admitted. "But also like I can breathe." The response from Kieran's side came in the form of an email from his lawyer 2 weeks later. It suggested Adrian had been emotionally unstable during the pregnancy and postpartum period. It suggested that her decision to pursue divorce so soon after a premature birth indicated poor judgment. It suggested joint custody with equal parenting time. Patricia Brennan called Adrian after reading it. "He's going for joint," she said. "I know. His lawyer is framing your emotional responses to a high-risk pregnancy and premature delivery as instability. I know. We're going to use everything." "Good." Patricia's response brief was filed the following Monday. It included the NICU visitor logs. Kieran's arrival at midnight. His departure at 1:47. His absence from every subsequent night. Adrian was admitted. It included the monitor log Adrian had kept at home, 7 weeks of daily records in her handwriting, compared to the 0 records Kieran had kept. It included a statement from Denise, the NICU nurse, who had been willing to confirm the chronology of that first night. It also included everything from the laptop. Kieran's lawyer went quiet for 2 weeks. When they came back, they were no longer asking for equal parenting time. It had been Simone who started talking first. Adrian found this out through Bia, whose cousin had kept listening. Simone had apparently discovered, sometime in early spring, that Kieran had not actually left his marriage for her. That the divorce was Adrian's doing, not his romantic transformation. That the story he had been telling her was incomplete. Simone had apparently used words about this that Bia declined to repeat verbatim. Adrian did not feel satisfaction exactly. She felt something more like the absence of weight. She took Ren to her 4-month checkup in April. Ren had gained 2 full pounds since coming home. The pediatrician, a calm woman named Dr. Albrecht, called her trajectory remarkable. Adrian sat in the paper-covered chair and held Ren in her lap, and thought about the word remarkable. Everything Ren did was remarkable. The way she had fought her way through those first weeks in the NICU when her lungs were still deciding. The way she opened her eyes now with this alert, considering look, as though she was assessing her options and finding them adequate. The way she held Adrian's finger with her whole fist and seemed to mean it. "She looks great," Dr. Albrecht said. "She is," Adrian said. She started a blog in May. She had resisted this. It felt performative in a way she was uncomfortable with. But Mara had been pushing her since January, pointing to forums where women in similar situations said they felt completely alone, pointing out that Adrian had 7 years of urban planning expertise, and had now become, without choosing it, something of an expert on navigating a high-risk pregnancy and early parenthood through marital collapse. She called it holding ground. She didn't use Ren's name. She didn't use Kieran's name. She wrote about the NICU in the way you write about something you survived, carefully, with respect for how close the edge had been. She wrote about keeping documentation, about finding a lawyer, about what it meant to be the only one who knew the monitor log. The first post got 300 reads. The second got 1,200. By the time she posted the third, about the night Ren was born and the midnight arrival, and what she had understood in the hour that followed. The comments were full of women she had never met telling her that they had felt this exact thing and had not known how to say it. She wrote back to every one of them. The divorce was finalized in August. Adrian received primary physical custody. Kieran was granted supervised visits twice a month at a family center, contingent on completing a parenting course and paying support on time. He also paid a settlement that covered Ren's medical and childcare costs through the next 2 years. He had come to sign the paperwork looking thinner than she remembered. His lawyer had to prompt him twice. When it was over, he stood in the hallway outside the office and said, "So I'm sorry. I know that doesn't do anything." Adrienne looked at him. She thought about the hospital lights going by overhead. She thought about the contraction in the kitchen over the dishes. "No," she said. "It doesn't." She walked out. Ren was 8 months old the first time she laughed. A real laugh, a full one, surprised out of her when Adrian made a face above the change table. Adrian stood there and let the laughter happen, and felt something open in her chest that she hadn't known was closed. Her mother came to stay for 2 weeks that fall. Ellen Marsh cooked things and held Ren for hours at a stretch so Adrian could sleep, and sat with her granddaughter in the afternoon light by the living room window, and said nothing in particular and everything necessary. "You look better," Helen told her one morning. "I feel better," Adrian said, and meant it. The blog kept growing. She started writing about things she hadn't expected to write about. The specific loneliness of being the only person who knows your child's medical history. The bureaucratic difficulty of updating emergency contacts when your life is in legal transition. The strange freedom of making decisions alone, after years of negotiating with someone who wasn't fully present anyway. She wrote about the monitor log. She wrote about Patricia Brennan. She got an email in October from a woman in Calgary, who had been in a NICU situation similar to hers. navigating a separation in parallel with a premature delivery, who said the monitor log idea had saved her in court. She had started her own documentation the day she read Adrian's post. Adrian read the email 3 times. Then she wrote back. She did not hear much about Kieran. Bia's cousin had moved on. What she gathered, through the particular information osmosis of a mid-sized city, was that Simone had gone back to Montreal. That Kieran had left the company. That he was renting a place in Etobicoke, and had made it to one of his supervised visits before missing the next 2. Patricia filed for his visits to be suspended pending review. He's not showing up, Patricia said on the phone. I know, Adrian said. Do you want to push for termination? Adrienne thought about Ren, who was now pulling herself up on the furniture, and regarding the distance between the coffee table and the couch with scientific interest. Not yet, she said. But document everything. If this is a pattern, I want the paper trail. It was December, exactly 1 year after the night Ren was born, when Adrienne took her daughter to Kensington Market for the first time. Ren was in a carrier on her chest, bundled against the cold, watching the street with those considering eyes. They walked the length of the market and back. They stopped for coffee. Adrian's, from a place that didn't require parking. And Ren reached out and grabbed the cardboard sleeve with a determination that made the barista laugh. Adrian stood on the sidewalk in the December cold, and held her daughter and thought about everything the year had been. The hospital lights, midnight arrival, the kitchen floor after Bia left, the laptop, the way she had kept the monitor log in a green notebook, because it was the only notebook she had handy that first week, and how that green notebook had sat on Patricia's desk in August and helped decide the rest. She had not planned any of it. She had simply kept track, the way she always had, the way she'd done with everything that mattered to her. Ren's weight at discharge. Ren's feeding times. Ren's first real smile, which had happened at 6 weeks corrected age on a Tuesday morning while Helen was holding her by the window. She had kept track, and in keeping track, she had kept everything. Her phone buzzed. It was Mara. How's the market, does she like it? Adrian looked at Ren, who had her fist curled around Adrian's collar, and was staring at a string of lights above a produce stand with the absolute focus of someone encountering the concept of light for the first time. She's assessing. Adrian typed back. I think she approves. She walked home through the cold with her daughter on her chest, and snow, just beginning to fall on the streets of the city she had always loved, and she felt, for the first time in longer than she could easily name, like herself.